I'm Natasha Kirchak, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel is now making extra special preparations for the arrival of the American president. We'll explore whether or not Israel will be able to maintain its military edge in the Middle East, and we'll also reveal why the Western Wall is about to become a lot more accessible to everybody. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Now that's a live look at what's happening at the sacred Western Wall in Jerusalem just a day before the American president lands in Israel. I think we can expect it to look a lot busier tomorrow, but in the meantime, the Israeli government is pulling out all of the stops for U.S. President Donald Trump's visit tomorrow. Originally, the American leader was going to be met with a basic handshake ceremony and a helicopter to Jerusalem to meet with the Israeli president. But in light of Trump's arrival in Riyadh on Saturday, where he was greeted by the King of Saudi Arabia, an air show, a series of cannons, and an escort of around a dozen horses, Israel may be feeling pressure to up the spectacle. Trump reportedly described the Saudi welcome as very impressive, and former President Barack Obama allegedly didn't receive the same kind of treatment when he visited Saudi Arabia. Israel's Channel 10 News has a picture of a military band practicing on the tarmac and says the Israeli president will make a speech upon Trump's arrival. According to a report at the New York Times, foreign officials are developing a framework for interacting with the unpredictable U.S. president. The question is it too late for Israel to add an air show? Well, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. For now, U.S. President Donald Trump is in Saudi Arabia today to address the leaders of 50 Muslim-majority countries. Riyadh's the first stop on the American leader's first foreign trip abroad, which encompasses a 9-day trek to the Middle East and Europe. Trump's speech centers on the battle between good and evil, although he's not expected to use the term radical Islamist terrorism to avoid offending his hosts. He will make a call, though, for the Arab world to drive terrorists out of their places of worship. He's also going to be holding private talks with the leaders of a few countries like Egypt and Qatar after meeting with the Gulf Cooperation Council. So far, Trump's already inked a major $100 billion arms deal with Riyadh that's effective immediately, as well as another military agreement that's worth $350 billion over the next 10 years. He's largely been able to avoid questions from the press over several controversies raging back home, related to his firing of FBI Director James Comey, as well as investigations into links between his administration and Russia. It remains to be seen if there's going to be any fallout over his sharing of sensitive national security information with Russian officials, which may have been provided by Israel. Trump is scheduled to leave Saudi Arabia tomorrow morning for his visit to Jerusalem, the holiest site in Judaism. Most analysts think the trip's not so much about substance, but more about making a good impression.
These first visits are really about personal relationship building much more than policy, and that ought to be a place where Trump really shines because he believes very strongly, he writes in Art of the Deal that everything comes down to personal relationships. And he will certainly be met by a number of leaders who very much want to have good relationships with him. So in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu will very much want to create a strong personal relationship that can override some of the turbulence we've seen there already. Same with the Saudis. Same, frankly, with some European leaders who, whatever they may think in private about things that he's said, don't feel that it's in anybody's interest to have open conflict with an American leader. But in all cases, they'll be sort of hedged in by their publics who are much more skeptical. What you want is that at the end of it, leaders come away with a clearer sense of this is what the administration really stands for. And I don't know that we're going to get that.
Meanwhile, 2 Likud ministers are now the first Israeli officials to respond to the new U.S.-Saudi arms deal, and they're voicing plenty of concern. Energy Minister Yuval Steinitz is pointing out that it's imperative for Israel to retain its qualitative military edge in the region, and is pointing out that the Jewish state considers Saudi Arabia to be a hostile country. He's also indicating that Jerusalem wasn't consulted before Washington signed the massive military agreement with Riyadh, and that Israel should have been given some sort of explanation. The U.S.-Saudi arrangement is ostensibly aimed at strengthening the Sunni kingdom's defenses against Iran, while Israeli Intelligence Minister Israel Katz is also voicing how critical it is to preserve the Jewish state's military edge. He's sounding cautiously optimistic that President Trump's Mideast tour will bolster anti-Iran alliances in the region. Katz says a strengthening of forces against Tehran presents an opportunity to advance regional security and economic cooperation as a foundation for regional peace. White House spokesman Sean Spicer sent out a tweet maintaining the defense agreement is the largest single arms deal in U.S. history. Trump also signed a number of other business deals with the kingdom, adding up to a total of $360 billion overall. It's our great honor to have with us in the studio Colonel Richard Kemp, the former commander of the British forces in Afghanistan, who is today a best-selling author. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, we just heard this story. Israeli officials are voicing concern that the new arms deal between the United States and Saudi Arabia may lead Israel to losing its military edge in the region. What do you think about that? What is your take on that? Should Israel be worried, in fact, about this issue?
Well, I think Israel should always be very concerned to maintain its military advantage in the region, which it has a very clear one. But I don't think they need to be too worried in this case, because there's no doubt with modern technology today, it can be shut on and shut off quite easily. So if, for example, the Saudis decided to do something with it that was not in Israel's interest, then I think the Americans could prevent them from doing so with relative ease. And the other issue, I believe, is that irrespective of technology, Israel has a very distinct advantage over the Saudis and any other country in this region as well. It's that the Israelis' military prowess and fighting ability will overcome, I think, almost any technological edge that another country might gain. So I don't think it's a major issue to be worried about.
Well, Saudi Arabia also seems to be convinced that Trump is going to be successful in reaching an Israeli-Palestinian peace deal. And we're hearing a lot of different opinions about this. What is the perspective from the British government and the British people as a whole?
Well, I can't really speak for the government and the people. I can speak for myself, and perhaps I reflect some of their views over there. I think it's very, very optimistic to expect a peace deal now. I mean, President Abbas went to the White House and delivered a pack of lies to President Obama about his willingness to make peace with Israel. He has no intention of doing so. He doesn't want peace with Israel. What he wants is the elimination of the Jewish state. He doesn't want to live in peace alongside them. So I don't think, I'm sorry to say this, I don't think that President Trump is going to be successful in this mission. However, I do believe that Saudi Arabia should be piling the pressure on the Palestinians, as should other Arab countries, to get them to actually see reason and to change the way that they think about it. But it does need, I think, significant Arab pressure as well as pressure from the West to actually, not concessions. They've had too many concessions, and all they've done is abuse it and take advantage of it.
Now, you've long been an advocate for the Israeli Defense Forces. My question for you is, what made you feel the need to stand up for the IDF and to continue standing up for the IDF?
Well, the IDF and the UK, the West, we have the same aims, we have the same objectives, we have the same, pretty much same culture. We are allies. Israel, the IDF and Israeli government provides massive support for the UK in terms of intelligence, technology, medical technology, a range of other issues which have kept British civilians and military people alive in different conflicts, in terrorist intelligence, etc. And we owe it, as a minimum, we owe it to Israel to reciprocate and to back them up and to treat them as friends and allies. And I do that. I mean, I've received a great deal of assistance from the IDF when I was still serving the British Army. And I want to give them back anything they ever gave to me. And I recognise they are a great army. All of the lies that are told about how they deliberately target innocent civilians are just that, they're lies. The IDF, as I've said repeatedly, including the United Nations, do more and have done more to safeguard the lives of innocent civilians on the battlefield than any other army in the world.
Now, there is a way in which you are trying to give back to Israeli society. We could say you, from what I've understood, you are trying to persuade the British government to make a royal visit to Israel. Now, tell us how that process is going and if that's actually going to happen, because I think if it is going to happen, a lot of people over here are going to be very excited about it.
Well, I think I'll make a couple of points. I mean, I think Israel is one of the very few, if not the only country in the Middle East, that a senior member of the royal family, the Queen, the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Edinburgh, have never visited since the formation of the state. They've been to Iran, Iraq, they've been to Saudi Arabia, they've been to the UAE, they've been to Egypt, they've been to pretty much every other country, but not Israel.
It's surprising.
Why is it? I'll tell you why it is. Because the British Foreign Office want to use this as a means of expressing their disapproval of Israel. And it's completely wrong. Israel doesn't need a royal visit. They don't need to be endorsed by the British royal family. But I think Britain does need to show that it treats Israel equally with every other country in the region. In fact, they should be treating them better because Israel, as I mentioned earlier, is a very strong ally of the UK. And I think it's particularly important we have a royal visit this year or next year because it's the centenary of the major battles fought over here in the First World War, in which 16,000 British and Empire troops lost their lives in this area. And the royal family, particularly Prince Charles, Prince Harry, should come over here and lead the commemoration of those troops.
Well, I think that we're all rooting for you and hoping that that actually happens. Thank you so much for coming in, Colonel.
My pleasure.
As soon as Air Force One touches down on the tarmac in Tel Aviv, the revival of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process is likely to take center stage. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to call on both the Israeli Prime Minister and the Palestinian Authority President to pave the path toward the resumption of peace negotiations. Israel's already getting a head start on that, with the cabinet voting on a number of economic incentives for the Palestinians today. The Israeli premier is proposing a greater number of building permits be granted for Palestinians living in Area C, which is 61% of the West Bank. He also wants his senior ministers to approve the accelerated development of several West Bank industrial zones, and that the Allenby Bridge crossing between the West Bank and Jordan remain open 24 hours a day. Transportation and Intelligence Minister Israel Katz says Netanyahu's proposed measures are bound to bolster Israel's diplomacy and ease tensions with the Arab world. While he's here, Trump is also likely to repeat his calls for Jerusalem to curb settlement building and for Abbas to stop PA-sponsored incitement against Israel. You'd think Israelis would be really excited over U.S. President Donald Trump's first landmark visit to their state. And even though the red carpet is being rolled out for the leader, the public's revealing pretty serious levels of doubt in the new president. Right after Trump assumed office in January, a whopping 79% majority of Israelis said they believe the new White House was more pro-Israel than pro-Palestinian. But now that number has plunged to just 56%. And 4% even feel that Washington's now more pro-Palestinian, which is a 1% rise. The 8% who said they didn't know whether Trump is neutral or not has more than doubled from 8 to 19% since the inauguration. This drop in popularity follows Trump's intel leak to the Russians, as well as his warm reception of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Washington. The president's also been backtracking on his campaign pledge to immediately relocate the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Other Israelis have been affronted that the presidential itinerary includes only a 15-minute stop at the nation's Holocaust Memorial. And other frustrations are rising over reports that Trump's advance team rejected the offer from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to accompany him to the Western Wall, although the American leader said he may still invite Netanyahu to join him on that momentous occasion. The West Bank government of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has recently imposed a number of heavy restrictions on Hamas aimed at pressuring the terrorists to relinquish their governance of Gaza. Now, the United Nations is warning that the consequences are inflicting a very heavy toll on the nearly 2 million residents of the Strip. Gaza's sole power plant shut down in mid-April after it ran out of fuel because the Palestinian Authority stopped paying for supplies. The director of the UN agency working in the enclave says the power and water crises are putting a serious strain on the territory.
There is a very low number of hours of electricity on the absolute basic provisions that is left today after the power plant closed. This is a dramatic situation, and in the words of the special coordinator, this is a crisis.
Residents struggling to cope with the energy crisis include many hospital patients who require special equipment to survive.
أزمة الكهرباء يعني عاملة لنا شلل كامل للبيت كله، يعني احنا بنعاني، يعني أول شيء قطاع غزة كله بيعاني من أزمة الكهرباء، وانا خاصه يعني بعاني اكثر من قطاع غزه. ليه؟ لانه انا عندي طفل ومريض محمد، ومحمد ابني عايش على الاجهزه زي ما انتم شايفين. اول ما بتقطع الكهرباء بقعد اجري انا ومرتي شمال ويمين، شوف الموتور، شغل الموتور.
The current acute shortage of power is also impacting local water quality. That's because the Hamas terrorist authorities were forced to close down sewage treatment facilities, and instead they're now pumping untreated sewage directly into the sea. For now, there are no permanent solutions for the crisis on the horizon, but it's interesting to note that most Gazans appear to be holding Hamas and the PA responsible for failing to help them, rather than placing blame on Israel, which normally supplies electricity to the territory. Now, anyone who's lived in Israel for the last few years has been thankful for the Iron Dome missile defense system, which keeps Hamas rockets from hitting our cities. Now, the company behind its command and control system is taking on a totally new challenge, helping New York's largest public power organization keep the lights on. I'm here with Natan Barak, CEO of Emprest. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So let's talk a little bit about what Emprest provides for the IDF first, and are other national militaries also using the technology that your company has?
Yes, we are specializing in command control system. We've been doing many command control system all around the world. We've started from the defense part. I'm a retired colonel from the Navy, and we have done air defense for many countries in Asia, and now we've just won another contract with the Great Britain and many other area, and we've done border control for other countries in Asia and a lot more. So we've been specializing in command control system in the defense part, but we moved to the commercial applications as well.
Now let's talk a little bit about what it means to move to the commercial applications and the impact that that's going to have on New York City.
What we would like to do is we would like to make it different as much as we have done in the defense part. We have a special technology for the defense, and we have transferred it to a commercial application. We've started here with this electrical company, with Ituran, with Mekorot, with many other companies. And we have took this also, we have installed it in NIPA. It's a project that we have been doing with NIPA and Bird funds. And we've been successful to create the most sophisticated predictive maintenance for transformer. The problem in New York and many other countries is that some of the transformer are burning up and causing outages. And what we have done, we are measuring different parameters within the transformer and predicting when might the transformer burned up and preventing it by either lowering the current, bypassing the transformer, or any other ways. So we believe that right now we have the best technology to predict that something is going wrong with those transformers, and we are in the process of implementing it in other countries like New Zealand and other ones.
So this technology is not only is going to be utilized in this way in New York City. I mean, this is something that can be implemented in other cities as well.
Yes, in fact, we have just won a huge project in New Zealand, which does not just do the assets management, but it will balance between the demand and the supply. There are new sources of energy coming every day. Right. And what we are doing is, whenever we are predicting that the peak might come up, and we are balancing between the demand and supply. It's going to be a very sophisticated platform. It calls DERM, Distributed Electrical Resource Management, and we believe that we are leading right now worldwide, and this is going to be implemented in more countries and also in the state.
Well, it looks like the technology that you guys have created is going to give us safer and smarter cities. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
The old city of Jerusalem was covered in the blue and white of the Israeli flag on Saturday night as part of the festivities to commemorate the 50-year anniversary of the reunification of the city. The 16th century ramparts were the screen for a colorful sound and light show featuring iconic images of the Six-Day War. The 1967 conflict brought the entirety of Jerusalem under Jewish sovereignty for the first time since the Hasmonean kingdom ended more than 2,000 years ago. At that time, the city extended far south of the Temple Mount, in what is now the City of David Archaeological Park and the Palestinian village of Silwan. Many had hoped that U.S. President Donald Trump would mark Jerusalem Day by announcing that the U.S. would move its embassy to the Israeli capital. But as he pushes for new peace talks, the prospects seem iffy. As U.S. President Donald Trump pushes for new peace talks, it sometimes feels like deja vu. After all, we've been down this road many times before, and there are always a few core issues where the Israelis and Palestinians are too far apart to compromise. The biggest issue of all may be the status of Jerusalem, and I'm here with Professor Moshe Amirav, former advisor to Ehud Barak at the Camp David Peace Summit, to discuss this. I see you have a wonderful new book, Jerusalem Syndrome, that we're going to speak a little bit about. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Now, in your view, has Israel failed to effectively unify Jerusalem since 1967? What mistakes has the Israeli government made along the way?
I mean, the fact is that Jerusalem is not united. In the end of the day, after 50 years, we failed. I'm saying it with a lot of sorrow. I'm not happy about it because I was a paratrooper who fought in Jerusalem. I'm Israeli. And I would like to see Jerusalem united. But we have to understand that when we say Jerusalem, it's more than just the capital of Israel.
Absolutely, and I mean, we can see this picture right here.
Yeah.
You were a young man, you received a very serious head injury, but you somehow managed to run out of the hospital down to Jerusalem on the day in which it was
so
reunified.
I have my feelings about it, especially after this 50 years. And my dream is that this will be one day the city of peace. I was in Camp David with Arafat, and I still think that we can bring peace to this city, which is called Ir Shalom in the Bible.
Now, what is different about President Donald Trump's approach to peace?
It is really, I'm very optimistic about his approach. He comes with a business approach, and he really comes to have a deal with the Israelis and Palestinians. What's new about him, and that's why I'm optimistic, that he thinks that without the Arab countries, the Arab League, and the Muslim countries, the Palestinians are not able to sign a peace treaty with Israel. And this is something that I said again and again when I was with Prime Minister Barak. I said, we need the Arab world to be with us in any peace conference with the Palestinians. And Trump understands it. The other thing is that he comes with a new attitude that has nothing to do with religion or any nostalgia about the past. He comes as a businessman. And as a businessman, the two sides, Palestinians and Israelis, on the issue of Jerusalem are very close. How do I know it's close? Because I was there with Arafat, and we saw that we can almost have a deal.
Now, what sort of compromise do you think that both the Israelis and the Palestinians could actually agree to regarding Jerusalem? Is there a compromise that could be made?
Yes, there is. I always give this kind of idea like the Vatican. You know, in Italy, there are two capitals in Rome. One is Rome as the capital of Italy, and one is part of Rome is capital of the Vatican, of the religion, which is Christianity. So we can have two capitals in Jerusalem, and the city should be open. I'm against a wall in the city, and there is no need for a wall, because if we have peace, we don't need a wall. So it's a new attitude and a new thinking that we need, and I believe that President Trump, he has this kind of business attitude, and I'm optimistic about it.
Well, I think we are all hoping for the best on his visit. He'll be arriving tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming in, Professor.
Thank you.
Before Israel's 1967 victory in the Six-Day War, Jews were forbidden to worship at their holiest site, the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Now that the city's been reunified, religious freedoms are safeguarded for the members of all faiths, but now the Israeli government wants to ensure that it's not only presidents or celebrities who can reach the Western Wall, but also those with special needs. The cabinet's about to authorize the construction of a new elevator, as well as an underground passageway leading to the ancient compound from the Jewish quarter in the Old City. Right now, the only way to reach the Temple Mount is by climbing a nearby steep road. The new plan will be far more accessible to anyone with impaired movement, such as those confined to wheelchairs or even the elderly. The $14 million project is the latest innovation to extend a warm welcome to everyone who wishes to pray at the holy site.
The Hebrew Word of the Day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say that you're only confined by the walls that you build for yourself, so today's word is kir, which means wall in Hebrew. Walls help us feel safe and warm. That's why we like having our own cozy little homes, or the Western Wall here in Jerusalem. But as safe as they may make us feel, we must always remember the kirim, or walls that you can build, can also end up keeping people out. And sometimes the invisible kirim that we construct around ourselves are successful at keeping out sadness, but can also keep out the joy that we need to survive. So here's our advice. Stop building a kir and start building more bridges. But if you end up constructing a wall, just make sure it has a door. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be fair to partly cloudy with a low of 63 or 17 degrees Celsius. And tomorrow is expected to be partly cloudy with a rise in temperatures and a high of 86 or 30 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.58 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.